We talked yesterday about Tennessee hitting a wall as they lost a tough one to the Georgia Bulldogs. That was not a game they wanted to lose, and it was certainly a bad look. Georgia was a really bad team, not yesterday, on Sunday. And with that loss, Tennessee suffered a significant drop. The blowout loss to Kentucky was one thing. Losing to Georgia was way, 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 way worse. Okay, so now Tennessee is in a bit of a bind because the SEC tournament for women's basketball starts this week. Now, the SEC tournament, interestingly enough, I still maintain that it's not taken into account as much, but I also maintain this seeding matters more to women's college basketball than men's. Why? You really want that home game in women's college basketball. That's the difficult part. You really, really, really want the home game in women's college basketball. And Tennessee, by nature of being Tennessee, they could potentially get a home game in the NCAA tournament. But looking at the bracketology, and just for those who don't know, Tennessee is going to play Texas A&M on Wednesday, I believe it is. That's their first SEC tournament game. Is Tennessee will play Texas A&M on Wednesday, and then the winner of that game will play Vanderbilt on Thursday. But going through this real quick, looking at the bracketology for Jerry Palm, I'm sorry, not Jerry Palm, listen to me, Charlie Cream, that's what I'm trying to talk about. Tennessee has now dropped to a 5 seed. Why is that significant? In the women's NCAA tournament, the top 4 seeds in each bracket get to play the first weekend at home. Losing to Georgia has now knocked Tennessee out of that path. So Tennessee's path looks like it'll have to be through the SEC tournament to get a home game. The same. Now, a top 4 seed would mean to be in the top 16 of the national rankings. Tennessee's number 18 in the AP poll. They're number 22 in the RPI. The good news is they're still number 14 in the net rankings, and they go heavily by the net rankings. By going heavily by the net rankings, and by virtue of being the Tennessee brand, they still have a 50-50 shot, I would say, of being a 4 seed to host the first weekend of the tournament, no matter what is said about, no matter what anybody's saying about the on the bracketology and where they belong. But I think they're going to have to win 2 games in the SEC tournament. I think they're going to have to win 2 games. They're going to have to beat Texas A&M. They can't lose to Texas A&M, and then they're going to have to beat Vanderbilt if they're going to go. Now, if they win those 2 games, they do play South Carolina on Friday. South Carolina will boost their RPI and their net rankings overall, win or lose. It'll help their schedule strength, whereas they will have added 2 wins to their schedule to their record. On top of that, they got to put up a fight against South Carolina. I don't know if they can. They're already hitting a wall. They look dead tired. And that was a problem with this team. The depth is still not where it needs to be. Now, we say that nobody's playing more than 25 minutes a game, which is the goal. But Kim Caldwell wants 10 people playing 20 minutes, and some of them are just not cut out for the system to be able to do that. So somebody like Jillian Hollingshead, who has to play more minutes, she wasn't recruited to play in this system, and I do think there's a ceiling for her in this system. So the goal for the Lady Vols is obviously going to be to host an NCAA tournament game. I'm sorry, the first weekend in the NCAA tournament. It's difficult to see if they're going to be able to do that, given the hand that they dealt themselves by losing to Georgia. That was a really, really, really big deal. We'll talk about this more in a second. First, we are broadcasting to you live from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln studio. Ted Russell Ford Lincoln is your home for the finest vehicles in Knoxville, new and used, East Tennessee's largest Ford and Lincoln volume dealer.
Like a blast from the past, the Super Dealer is back. Look to the skies, Knoxville. The Super Dealer is fighting for price, service, and the American-made. Ted Russell Ford is your Super Dealer, just in time for Truck Month. Save up to $5,350 on this new Ford F-150 XLT Hybrid, or save up to $7,000 on this new Ford Expedition. Come see the Super Dealer today at either Ted Russell Ford.
Welcome back to the program, talking about the Lady Vols and their path to get a home playoff game. Ideally, they would want to win 3 games in this tournament. Do you guys think they have a shot at beating South Carolina? Now, South Carolina notoriously underperforms sometimes in the SEC tournament. case you guys forgot, last year before Kelly Harper was fired, Tennessee actually had South Carolina beat and then left the player wide open for a game-winning 3 to lose that game. That could have changed the complexion and dynamics of everything with the program and Kelly Harper coaching the team. That was a rough game for her. That was a rough game for the Lady Vols, and probably all in all led to her firing. Do you think this time around Tennessee can get them? Maybe, but can they get past Texas A&M and Vanderbilt first? I mean, I don't know. They're higher ranked than both teams. Even though Vanderbilt's the higher seed, Tennessee's going to be favored over Vanderbilt if they face off in that second round game on Thursday. They first have to get through the first round game, though. Again, we don't know how this is going to play out. Now, here's the problem with trying to beat South Carolina. The tournament's being held in Greenville in South Carolina. Pretty sure the Gamecocks are going to have more home fans than anybody else. So I think that's going to be totally difficult for them. But at the same time, I just think it's way too difficult of a process for the Lady Vols to host an NCAA tournament game. And that loss to Georgia is going to end up being a killer. I mean, it's going to end up being a killer. The biggest thing they can bank on at this point is the Lady Vol brand name, which is a great brand. There is nothing wrong with that brand. Everything with it is worthy of praising, but it's going to be tough. Now, David Speaks says the Lady Vols are what, an 8th seed? They're 9th seed in the SEC tournament, but they could actually end up being a 4 or 5 seed overall in the NCAA tournament. It's between 4 or 5. They won't be any lower than a 6th, put it that way. And so that's kind of where we are. I'm going to set that up as the poll question. Here we go. We'll set this up. What's more likely? And this is actually an intriguing one since we're talking about both of them. What's more likely? Men's Vols get a number 1 seed. Lady Vols host the first weekend in the NCAA tournament. What's more likely in the NCAA tournament? Men's Vols get a number 1 seed. Lady Vols host the first weekend. All right. So you guys vote on that because I'm kind of interested where y'all land. Both seem like a bit of an uphill climb. Right now, the men's side being a number 1 seed would seem more likely, but that's not taking into account things that are going to play out the rest of the week. And it's also not taking into account politicking, because who's more likely to get the fairer draw from national media and national people affiliated with the sport and the selection committee? It's the Lady Vols. They're a giant brand. Everybody wants to see them be successful. So when you take that into account, it's really hard to say that the Lady Vols aren't going to be the ones with the advantage on that. Daniel Maddox, nice one. Maybe Harper and Oates should discuss late game strategy. I mean, you were right. That Kelly Harper defense was awful. I think the Nate Oates coaching at the end of this past game was even worse. Honestly, I think we're going to have to say that was even worse. That was just an absolute embarrassment. I've never seen something so bad in my life, and taking that into account, it's a little intriguing how bad that was. So you got me there.